Pottery Barn has inspired quite a few of my favorite DIY projects over the last year, and many of them started with a thrift find, a Dollar Tree item, or something most people would have overlooked. Today, I've gathered 26 of my favorite Pottery Barn-inspired DIYs, thrift flips, and home decor transformations into one video. If there's one thing that these projects have taught me, it's that inspiration is everywhere. You just have to train yourself to see it. And by the end of the video, I think you'll be looking at everyday items a little differently too. Now grab your coffee, get comfy, and let's dive in. So I recently spotted these little felt birds at Dollar Tree. They came in a few spring colors, and what caught my attention right away was that they actually had a bit of weight to them. And they immediately reminded me of those artisan birds from Pottery Barn, the ones that are carved from clay and sell for around $60. Now these were definitely smaller and a lot simpler to start with, but they had that same quiet sculptural feel to them, and that's what I usually notice. Not something that looks exactly the same, but that it gives you a similar look or feeling to build from. I started with a few coats of white acrylic paint just to completely cover the pink color, and then I went in with a softer antique white and began pouncing to give it the variation of color like the inspiration. At first it was working, but then it started to feel too flat and blotchy, so I switched directions a bit. I took a very watered down gray paint, dabbed it on lightly, and then wiped it back with paper towel. The layering of the paint is what really changed everything. It softened the finish and gave it more of that subtle variation you see in stone. This piece is one of those small details that doesn't stand out on its own, but when you place it into a vignette, it just finishes everything around it in a really quiet, simple way. When I was at Dollar Tree the other day, I was so happy to see that they brought back these beautiful mirrors because they remind me so much of the Love Shack fancy frames Pottery Barn carries. And last year, I actually turned one into framed artwork using a Dollar Tree canvas. But this time, I wanted to make an actual standing picture frame. First, I gave the mirror a quick coat of champagne bronze spray paint by Rust-Oleum to tone down the bright plastic finish and make it look a little more high-end. And for the picture, I chose one of my favorite photos from my son's wedding. I almost always order my prints from Walgreens because they constantly run photo specials. And right now, all prints are 50% off, so definitely check online for coupon codes before ordering. This time, I went with a sepia matte finish, and I love how soft and vintage it feels in this frame. Then all we needed to do was add a kickstand since the mirror doesn't have one. So I grabbed an old frame from my stash, removed the backing, and used E6000 to attach the stand right to the back of the mirror, making sure everything lined up correctly before gluing it down. And honestly, this little frame turned out so beautiful. And here's the Love Shack fancy version, and here's mine. Sometimes the easiest projects come together before you even leave the thrift store. When I spotted this cut glass vase at Goodwill, it reminded me of the Love Shack fancy vases. The shape was already there, it just needed a base. And sitting on the very same shelf was this little tapered candlestick holder for 99 cents. So for less than $4, I brought both pieces home, gave them a good cleaning, and used a little E6000 to attach them together. I love projects like this because there's nothing complicated about them. It's simply taking two ordinary pieces and seeing how they can work together. And now all this vase needed was some flowers. I know everyone loves Trader Joe's for flowers, but can you believe this bunch of roses from Whole Foods was only $10.99? There were nearly 3 dozen blooms in this bundle. I've never seen roses quite like this before, with so many flowers on a stem. And once everything was styled, I think it turned out beautiful. Here's the Love Shack fancy version for $159, and here's mine for less than $4. Lately, I've been seeing these floating display easels everywhere, and I love the look of them. Instead of leaning art against a wall, they hold it upright and almost making the art feel sculptural. But you don't have to use it for art. You could also use it for personal photos too. Now, Pottery Barn has a beautiful version of this type of easel, but before spending $129, I wanted to see if I could make one for myself. So I decided to start with a Dollar Tree easel for $1.25 and use it as the foundation. For the base, I pulled a few pieces of scrap wood from my stash, although you could easily use Dollar Tree wood pieces, paint sticks, or even leftover wood from another project. But always check Home Depot's trash cans in their lumber department. You might find a freebie there too. So I just started playing around with the pieces and using the canvas I will be displaying to measure where they should go. Once I decided on the layout, I drilled a few pilot holes and started assembling, always referring back to my inspiration image. Now, my version isn't designed to securely hold a heavy frame artwork like the Pottery Barn one. I really just wanted a unique way to display a small canvas, so for my purposes, this worked perfectly. Then I wanted to add the little detail on top. I played around with a few different pieces from my craft stash and ended up using this wooden disc because it reminded me of the detail on the inspiration piece. Once everything was assembled, I stained the wood using Waverly Dark Wax to help it blend in with the other wood tones around my home. While that was drying, I turned my attention to the canvas. This little Dollar Tree print reminded me of the Moody still life paintings I've seen from Olive Atelier. Their versions can sell for hundreds of dollars, but this little 8x8 canvas cost me $1.25. To get it more of an oil painting look, I'm using the Mod Podge technique I've shared before. I originally saw this technique on Instagram a few years ago, but I don't know who the original creator was. Idea is to mimic the brush strokes you would see in a painted canvas by applying the Mod Podge in different directions and building up texture across the surface. Then once it was dry, I used a little space tape to secure the canvas to the easel. It's amazing what a simple display easel can do. Instead of feeling like a little Dollar Tree canvas, it now feels like a decorative piece all on its own. So when I spotted this sangria bottle, I wasn't just thinking about the sangria. I was also looking at the shape. Because if you've ever browsed Pottery Barn, you've seen oversized pottery jugs and decorative vessels that have a very similar silhouette. Most people would just see an empty bottle headed for the recycle bin. I saw free decor. Well, after my daughter-in-law helped me finish it off. Once we emptied it, I gave it a good cleaning and a coat of Zinsser primer. But when I started looking at it more closely, there were a couple of details that bothered me. The threaded top and flat label area made it look exactly what it was, a bottle. And vintage pottery jugs don't usually have a twist-off top. So I grabbed some joint compound and started filling in the threaded area as well as the recessed label section. At first I thought I could completely disguise the label area, but I quickly realized the glass shape wasn't going to let me build it up enough. Sometimes with DIYs, you just have to adjust the plan and work with what the piece wants to be. So instead of fighting it, I decided the back would simply be the back. Not ideal, but completely workable. Once everything was smooth, it was time for painting, so I got out a few colors of craft paint in light taupe and brown colors, and with some damp paper towel, I started dabbing and swiping until I got the desired look. And what started out as an empty sangria bottle ended up looking much more like the oversized pottery-inspired pieces that sell for so much more. I especially love the shape and scale of this one styled on my mantle. Not too shabby for something that was headed for the recycling bin. So when I spotted this dot frame at Pottery Barn, I immediately wanted to recreate it. There's something about the texture of those raised dots against the gold frame that looks so collected and elevated. And I've actually done a similar version before using pearl vase filler from Dollar Tree, and that one turned out beautifully. This time I wanted to try something different and see if I could get even closer to the Pottery Barn look. I found these thumbtacks at Dollar Tree, and honestly, the moment I saw them, I thought, that's it. I grabbed a pack along with this gold frame and went to work. Now, I'm not gonna lie, at first it was a little bit of a struggle getting them in, but once I slowed down and used the leverage from my silicone mat, pushing them down with steady pressure, they went in perfectly every time. and I did run out of tacks before I finished. So I filled in the last 2 spots with some of my pearl fillers, and honestly, they were the exact same size, so you'd never know. You could actually use either one or even mix them, but I have to say, the tacks feel so much sturdier in the frame, and I think they'll hold up beautifully long term. All that was left was to give it a coat of spray paint. I used Hammer Gold by Behr, and just like that, we were done. And here's the Pottery Barn version, and here's my version. These little birds I have a soft spot for. I actually made them over in a previous video to look like stone, and I loved how they turned out. But when I saw Pottery Barn's Brass Decorative Birds, a set of 3 for $129, I thought I have to try this. One bird from Dollar Tree is $1.25, so for $3.75 you can create the whole set, but I only wanted one. And here's where the project almost ended up in the trash. You see, I sprayed them gold first, and because they're made of velvet, they just absorbed the paint and turned brown. So I tried hand painting them instead, and somehow they got even darker. But I had a light bulb moment, so I pulled out the Mod Podge and gave them a good coat and let them dry completely. Then I went in with some enamel gold craft paint, and I honestly couldn't believe how they turned out. The surface finally had something to grab onto, and the gold just popped. Sometimes the projects that almost don't make it in the end up being the best ones. And here's the Pottery Barn version, and here's my version. Now, Pottery Barn has these gorgeous picture rails, and I've been eyeing them for a while. But here's what they don't tell you up front. That $99 price tag, that's just for the rail. The frames aren't included, and it's smaller than what they have pictured. They are actually showing 2 rails. So I decided to challenge myself and try to recreate this using Dollar Tree supplies. I also had a reason I really wanted to make this work. I've been wanting to display photos from my son's wedding, and nothing I'd seen felt quite right, but this did. And Dollar Tree has these black frames with white mats that look so similar to the Pottery Barn ones. And since it's spring, they had the hanging basket chains in the garden section, and that chain style was exactly what I was drawn to. So I picked up a couple of pieces of wood, some command strips, and book rings from the school supply section. When I got home, I played around with the layout for a while, probably longer than anything else in this video. I took a photo of the final layout so that I could refer back to it as I put everything together. I really recommend this step so you're not second-guessing yourself, and you can easily make all your measurements when putting everything together. So once I had my layout, I stained the 2 pieces of wood, then glued them together. I always stain before I glue whenever I can because the stain won't take to the glue line. It just looks more finished that way. Now for the hardware detail. I wanted strips wrapping around the wood to mimic the metal hardware on the Pottery Barn version. I had some faux leather vinyl in my stash from Crafter Square. I'm not sure if they carry it anymore, and if you can't find it, you could use craft sticks painted black and cut to fit around the board, or pick up some faux leather ribbon from Amazon, which is pretty inexpensive. With both options, you'll still get a very similar look. After I cut my strips and attached them with Gorilla Glue epoxy, I secured the strips with some clothespins. The metal clamps from Dollar Tree were making marks in the faux leather. For hanging, I used command strip hooks with metal pieces from my stash that I pulled apart from the plastic hanger and then spray painted them black. But you could use the Dollar Tree command strip hooks and paint them black. Once everything was dry, I measured out the garden chain, and 1 package was actually enough for my layout. For the larger horizontal photo, I used a double chain, and I used eye hooks to attach everything to the frame and to the book rings, which I also spray painted black. Dollar Tree has actually been out of their picture hanging kits for a while, but you can grab eye hooks on Amazon for about $5 and you'll have 90 left over. They'll actually come in handy for the holidays for ornaments, so I know I'll use them and they won't go to waste. Now, the day before I started, I ordered my prints from Walgreens so they'd be ready for pickup when the project was done. Nothing worse than finishing something and not having the last piece. Oh, and if you use Walgreens, always have a quick Google search to find the current coupon code. I was able to save 40% on my prints. Now, one thing I might do differently next time, I'd use 4 pieces of wood instead of 2, just to give the rail a little more thickness. But honestly, I'm so happy with how this turned out. And it's hanging in my home now, and every time I walk past it, I smile. And here's Pottery Barn's version, and here's my version. So my last trip to Dollar Tree, I noticed these melamine trays. They are super cute as is, but I immediately knew what I wanted to do with them. You see, Pottery Barn has these beautiful enamel-style trays out right now, and they are about the same size. So of course, I had to add it to cart to DIY. The first thing I did when I got it home was to take it outside and flip it over and give the back a coat of gold spray paint. Then I sprayed the front with white to cover the original design. It took a couple of coats, but once it was done, I had a clean blank canvas. Here's the technique I wanted to share because it's a game changer for napkin and tissue paper projects. Instead of Mod Podging directly onto the napkin, which causes a lot of wrinkles, I Mod Podged the tray first and let it dry completely. So then we were ready to move on. My daughter-in-law had made a phone stand from my previous video using Lily Pulitzer napkins, and she left one behind. The second I saw it against the tray, I knew it was meant to be. You could also use Dollar Tree tissue paper. This one they have out right now is beautiful. I cut the napkin down a little and separated it just to the printed layer, positioned it exactly where I wanted it, covered it with parchment paper, and used a dry iron. I have a Cricut iron, but Amazon has a very inexpensive craft irons for around $10 to $15. What the iron does is reactivate the Mod Podge and bond the napkin to the surface with fewer wrinkles. It's not going to be absolutely perfect, and that's okay. That's part of its charm. But it's also so much smoother than the traditional method. And now that the napkin is attached to the tray, I cut off any excess and sand the rest using my finger sander in a downward direction, and I will have all the supplies linked in the description box below. I then just took the iron and sealed the edges. Once the napkin was set, I went around the rim with a gold metallic paint pen from Dollar Tree. That edge detail is what gives the enamel tray that look and mimic the Pottery Barn version. To seal everything, I Mod Podged the rim first, keeping my brush away from the napkin because the pen does bleed. Then with a clean brush, I gently Mod Podged over the napkin. You have to be gentle here so you don't tear it, and you will see some wrinkles and bubbling, but don't panic. Just trust the process and let it dry completely. I gave mine about 3 hours, then went back over the whole thing with parchment paper and the iron one more time to smooth everything out. And like I said, it won't be perfect, but it still looks beautiful, and I love it. Now here's the Pottery Barn version, and here's mine. Now Pottery Barn does these beautiful candle cloches, and I've been obsessed with them. The glass, the gold hardware detail on top is just perfect. But Dollar Tree actually has many glasses that would make a great cloche. Of course, they're smaller than the Pottery Barns, but you can still elevate a candle with them. And even Dollar Tree candles have come a long way. These small ones with the wooden lid with the simple gold trimmed label are totally the Pottery Barn aesthetic. So I wanted to see if I could bring the whole look together, and for the top detail, I decided to use wooden beads and small wooden slices, glued them together after I filled the hole in the bead and painted them gold to mimic the hardware look on the Pottery Barn version. And just a quick tip, Dollar Tree has these body oils right now with a beautiful round gold top, and they would be absolutely perfect for the top of a cloche. You might want a slightly larger base to balance it, but they are gorgeous. Now back to our regularly scheduled program. Once those tops were completely dry, I attached them to the bottom of the glass with E6000. And here's the Pottery Barn version, and here's my version. Now this next one I couldn't believe. Cut glass decanters in Dollar Tree. Have you seen these yet? I grabbed a few to tuck away for the holidays because I think they'll make the most gorgeous little gifts. But of course we need to keep a couple to style with. They are so amazing. But what I really can't get over is how much they look like Pottery Barn's decanter. The baby version, yes, but so what? Because here's the thing, you don't need to put this on your bar. That's expected. Style it somewhere unexpected instead. In your bathroom with mouthwash or on your nightstand with a small glass, it looks like something out of a boutique hotel. Now, if you need a large drink in the middle of the night, this won't work for you. But if you just need a little water to take your supplements or medication, it's absolutely perfect. And here's the Pottery Barn version, and here's the Dollar Tree version. Pottery Barn does frames so beautifully, and I recently came across this bamboo style that I just love, but with a coat of gold spray paint, this Dollar Tree frame goes from silver to something that gives you that same warm, organic feel. Now here's the Pottery Barn version, and here's my version. So when I was at the Dollar Tree, I spotted these rose tea lights. The flowers were made from foam, and I immediately thought of those brass roses from the Love Shack Fancy collection at Pottery Barn. The originals retail for right around $80 to $100. So I grabbed a pack of 2 for $1.25. And as soon as I got home, I took them outside and gave them a few light coats of metallic gold spray paint. Because they're so lightweight, they keep shifting in the wind. So I just worked in thin layers and let them dry in between. Once they were fully coated, I felt like they needed leaves, just like the inspiration piece. So I grabbed a couple of faux rose stems from my stash, removed a couple of leaves, and spray painted those gold as well, and hot glued them to the base, and that was it. 2 beautiful brass-inspired roses for $1.25. And Pottery Barn has a beautiful woven toilet paper holder that retails for $59. And while I love the look of it, I just couldn't justify that price for something that holds toilet paper. So I started paying attention at the thrift store, specifically looking for baskets with 2 sturdy handles, one on each side. And now that I've made one, I actually notice them all the time. And once I found the right basket, I grabbed a Dollar Tree plunger, took off the rubber piece and cut the handle down to size, and then stained it to be closer to the basket color. Then I slid it through the handles with the toilet paper, and that was it. A $59 Pottery Barn look for $4. The next piece is this thrifted vase that I thought we could transform into one of those French Glazed Pottery Style vases you see at places like Pottery Barn. The shape really caught my eye because of the raised section near the top. Felt perfect for creating that two-tone glazed look you often see on those pieces. The vase itself was $3, but the color wasn't right and it had a decorative pattern in the pottery that we needed to hide. So to smooth everything out, I mixed together powdered joint compound and a little water until it was about the consistency of frosting, and then basically spread it all over the vase to cover the design. Once that dried, I sanded down any rough spots and started working on the bottom section using a few different brown acrylic paints, just dabbing them on with a damp paper towel to build up that aged pottery look. For the top, I wanted to recreate that olive green glaze like the inspiration piece. I won't take you through the whole process because when I stepped back and looked at it, the whole thing looked like an eggplant to me. So I thought maybe it was just the color and tried switching to blue instead, but somehow I still couldn't unsee the vegetable. At that point, I decided the safest option was to reset the top section completely, so I painted over it with a soft beige base. Then I went back to the same brown tones from the bottom, just slightly darker this time, and finally it started to bring the piece together. Then I needed to add those drip marks like the inspiration piece, so with some water-based dark wax that I watered down, I started dabbing on drips with a paintbrush, taking off areas that were too dark with a paper towel and blending others together to get the look I was going for. Once everything was dry, I sealed the top with a gloss acrylic top coat paint from Dollar Tree to mimic that French glazed look. And that was the moment I finally felt happy with how it turned out. and now it has that soft French pottery look I was hoping for. Now the Love Shack Fancy collaboration at Pottery Barn just keeps getting better and better. I completely fell in love with their bathroom accessories because they're so soft, feminine, and vintage inspired, and I knew we could recreate a similar look using a few simple Dollar Tree supplies. In Dollar Tree's party section, they have these scallop containers that have such a similar silhouette to the Love Shack Fancy trash can. And then for the makeup brush holder, I used one of Dollar Tree's glass candle holders that they have carried forever because the shape was almost perfect. The first step was to give both pieces a few coats of white spray paint, and once that dried, it was time to start adding the floral details using some napkins I already had in my stash from another project. These napkins are 2-ply, so you'll want to separate and remove the bottom layer first. Then, to avoid harsh cut lines around the flowers, I like using little water paintbrush from Dollar Tree with water to gently trace around the design before tearing it out. You can also just use your finger dipped in water if that's easier. Then, using my homemade Mod Podge mixture, equal parts glue and water, I started layering the flowers onto both pieces. Once everything was completely dry, I sealed them with a matte Rust-Oleum clear coat. Since these are going into a bathroom, they may occasionally get wet. And I'll link everything I used in the description box below. And here's the Love Shack Fancy inspiration, and here are my versions. I honestly love how delicate and pretty these turned out. This next project was also inspired by the Love Shack Fancy Floral Pillar Candles from Pottery Barn, but those candles can run anywhere from $25 to $40 each, and since we already have plenty of floral napkins left over, this felt like the perfect project to use them on. And if you've happened to see my Halloween video, you may recognize the same technique because I used it then to make decorative Halloween candles too. For these, I started with the Dollar Tree LED pillar candles, this time using both sizes in white. Then, using only the top printed layer of the napkin, I wrapped the design around the candle with a piece of wax paper over the top. Using my mini craft iron on low heat, I slowly ironed the napkin directly into the candle. As the wax warms up, it grabs the napkin and almost embeds the design right into the surface. Once everything was attached, I trimmed the top and bottom edges as closely as possible, and to finish off the top edge, I lightly ran the iron around it one last time so those tiny edges melted down smoothly into the candle. And here's the Love Shack Fancy version, and here's mine. At my local thrift store, I spotted this round cheesecake pan with a removable bottom for $1, and immediately it reminded me of the round trays Pottery Barn carries. I have several versions of these trays, and I thought it would be such a fun way to recreate a similar look on a budget. What I love most, though, was the removable insert because it gives you so many options later on. You could cover it with fabric, wallpaper, scrapbook paper, even something playful like those CB2 monkey trays, or swap it out seasonally with holiday prints or decorative paper. The possibilities are really endless. Before painting the tray, I pulled some handles from my stash. At first I tried gluing them on, but that definitely didn't work, so I ended up drilling and screwing them into the tray instead, which was pretty simple. Then all it needed was a few coats of spray paint to give it that warmer metallic finish, and that was it. I headed to the thrift store to see if I could find something similar to those embroidered Pottery Barn pillows, which are as much as $90, and this store usually has great linens. So I was feeling pretty hopeful, but when I got there, the entire pillow covering section was gone. So I started digging through the curtains, tablecloths, placemats, and honestly, anything with texture. And I found some possible options, but then I found where they moved them to. And I was so excited I forgot to film the selection, but you can see a little peek of it behind my cart. And there were a few good ones, but this had the true embroidered look I was going for. It's not exact, but it's really close, and it was only $3.99. So I took it home, threw it in the wash, and that did the trick. It brightened it up beautifully, and now it smells amazing. it's time to fill the pillow cover. I found this huge bag of batting and pillow forms at a local shop called Resource Depot. It's one of those places where you can fill a bin for $10. I'll link it below if you're local. It's such a great spot. This is exactly what I was hoping for. This wood frame idea was inspired by one I saw at Pottery Barn. I love the scale of it, and since I already had a window frame at home, it felt like the perfect piece to update instead of buying something new. The size was exactly right for the space, but the finish had started to feel a little busy for the area. So I removed the old chippy paint, which actually sanded off pretty easily, and then I took a dark antiquing wax for a richer tone. The change alone made the piece feel calmer, more grounded, and much more intentional, and it immediately worked better with my other pieces and furniture. The biggest transformation, though, was adding a mirror behind the panes. I had the mirror cut at Lowe's. They're one of the only places that will cut mirror affordably and to exact measurements, which makes the project feel this much more accessible if you've never worked with mirror before. But instead of gluing it permanently, I mounted the mirror using small metal offsets. This way, if I ever change my mind, I can remove the mirror and use it for another project. I can remove it without damaging anything. That's the beauty of the offsets. And I always try to build flexibility into projects like this, especially for pieces in high traffic spaces. And if you don't have a frame to recreate this look, you can always use Dollar Tree framed mirrors and glue them together to get the same scale. And if you don't like the black ones, grab some of the 4x4 mirrors and frames and go that route. Now it's funny, I wasn't exactly sure about this piece at first, but once it was up and styled, it was actually what the space needed. It feels more refined, more cohesive, and much more in line with how I want this area to feel going into the new year. Every time I walk past it, I love it more and more, and I think that's the best sign that the update was worth it. So when I recently spotted a shelf on Pottery Barn's website, it reminded me how timeless this design really is, and how easy it is to recreate at home. You see, I originally made shelves like these years ago when I wanted to display photos of my son and my partner's son without doing a full gallery wall. They ended up being one of my favorite projects because they're simple, flexible, and easy to customize. The smaller version I'm making today is using Dollar Tree wood, and I'm planning to use it in an upcoming makeover. But you can make these shelves any size or configuration you want. The key is keeping all of the wood pieces the same length. That's what makes it work. For my larger shelves, I had Home Depot cut all of the wood for me. I paid around $30 for two 4-foot shelves, and putting them together took about 20 minutes with just a few screws. I'll leave the measurements in the description box if you want to try this yourself. For the smaller shelf, I stain the wood before assembling it. If you glue it first, the stain won't absorb evenly, so doing it this way makes a big difference in the final finish. What makes this shelf so versatile is how you finish it. A different stain or paint completely changes the look, which means it can work with a lot of different decor styles. And the shelf has so many uses: photos, plants, or even decorative objects, just to name a few. And I'll be using the smaller version in next week's makeover in a different way, so make sure you're subscribed if you don't want to miss that. My next project was inspired by Pottery Barn's Shell Shadow Box wall art. These pieces retail for around $600 and come in a few different versions: tulip shell, oyster shell, and a few others. But I want to pause here for a second because pieces like this are often misunderstood. At first glance, they can feel coastal or seasonal, but what really draws me to them isn't the shell itself, it's the texture, the materials, the layering. That's what makes this kind of artwork year-round and feel elevated rather than decorative. In order to recreate this, I used an old wooden word sign I already had and flipped it over to the back. I see these signs at thrift stores all the time, and they're perfect for projects like this because they already have the depth built in. I gave mine a quick stain to warm up the wood, then added a linen background using leftover fabric and Mod Podge. That simple step immediately softened the piece and gave it that same elevated feel of the inspiration. From there, I grabbed a bag of shells from Amazon and used regular white glue to arrange them in a loose circular pattern, similar to the Pottery Barn version. This was honestly one of the most relaxing projects I've done in a while. There's no right or wrong here. You can take your time, adjust as you go, and let it come together naturally. The entire project cost about $10, and I still have plenty of shells left over for future DIYs. Once I finished and styled, it gave me exactly what I was hoping for, something calm, collected, and textural that adds interest through materials, not decoration. It fits right in with the rest of my home and feels intentional without feeling trendy. This is one of those projects that really proves you don't need expensive pieces to get that Pottery Barn look. It's all about how you layer, finish, and use what you already have. I also wanted to share this piece because the fluid style art is everywhere right now. You'll see versions like this at Pottery Barn and other high-end stores for as much as $200 a piece. What I love about this style is that it's incredibly forgiving, and it's not about precision, it's about movement and flow, which is why it works so well in so many spaces. Plus, it would be very easy to recreate. But Dollar Tree actually has a similar print, and honestly, it works beautifully just the way it is. You don't have to change a thing, but if you want to customize it, something as simple as changing the frame color, a soft blush, a warm neutral, even a muted tone, completely shifts the feel. This is one of those pieces that works well year-round and isn't tied to a theme or a season. It's soft, artsy, and calming without demanding attention, which makes it perfect for a bathroom, a guest room, or any space you want something interesting but not busy. So these sculptural bookends at Pottery Barn really caught my eye. They are stunning and made of red clay and hand painted, but will cost as much as $120 for the large set. It's just a beautiful piece of art, and again, this piece that isn't seasonal, but it could be if you want it to be. So I wanted to see if I could recreate the same look using a few simple materials. When I started experimenting with the sculptural heart, I wasn't focused on making it perfect. I was paying attention to the shape, size, and texture. I used Quikrete for a few of the heart-shaped molds from the Dollar Tree to see which one gave me the best shape. When mixing the Quikrete, I like to sift out the rocks for a smoother finish. I also mixed to the consistency of oatmeal, and this time I experimented with mixing in some latex paint with the water to lessen the gray color of the concrete. With the plastic mold, I sprayed it well with cooking spray so that it would release easily when set. Once the hearts were dry, it was time to make the bases. With the plastic bowl, I sprayed it with cooking spray, and then the tin mold, I used some plastic wrap to ensure that it would also come out easily. Once everything was fully cured, I sanded the edges a little, and then it was time for paint. I went a little darker than the Pottery Barn version, but that's the beauty of making your own art. You can always adjust the finish later if you want something lighter or warmer. And pieces like this work because of their imperfections. The softened edges and the stone-like surface, that's what gives them an artisan feel, rather than a crafty one. Styled with books or layered on a shelf, they really read as sculptural objects instead of themed decor, which is why they work year-round and feel so timeless. For this next one, I want to focus on wreaths because high-end stores often style wreaths all year long, and a eucalyptus wreath doesn't feel seasonal at all. It works in any room, any time of the year. And you see versions of this in so many designer spaces, and it's a simple way to bring that collected, elevated look into your home. I actually have been missing a wreath since the holidays, and I wanted one that felt fresh but flexible. Last year, I found a grapevine wreath at the thrift store, and it's been hanging out in my garage waiting for the right moment. Recently, I came across a eucalyptus stems at the bins, which cost me about $1. I also had a few other stems on hand that I thought I might use, but in the end, I kept it simple. At first, I was going to use zip ties to attach everything, but I decided on floral wire instead. That way I can easily take it apart later if I want to refresh it or tuck in some seasonal accents. I started by laying out the larger pieces first to see where everything would go and make sure the spacing felt balanced and I had enough. I paid attention to the direction of the leaves, making sure the fronts faced outward and everything was going in the same direction. Then I added a slightly different bunch to give the wreath more depth and dimension. One of the things I love about eucalyptus is how versatile it is. You could easily tuck in a few pops of color depending on the season. Easter eggs in the spring, bright flowers for summer, sunflowers for fall. It's a little way to keep the wreath feeling fresh all year without having to start from scratch. Honestly, I thought this DIY might feel too simple to show, but I really love how it turned out. It's a small, elegant accent that adds life and texture to a wall, door, or shelf. And it's proof that a few well-chosen pieces can completely change the feel of a space. This next piece is a little different because it's actually something I've had for years, but seeing similar ones pop up in high-end stores made me want to take another look at mine and give it a refresh. Lately, I've been noticing decorative mailboxes showing up on sites like Magnolia and Pottery Barn, especially in those warm brass tones, and it reminded me of this one I picked up at a flea market probably 25 years ago. I've never actually used it outside. I've always styled it inside my home, usually near the front door as a decorative piece. More recently, I've been using it in my kitchen to hold little things for my orchids like plant food, clips, that kind of thing. It's one of those pieces that's surprisingly versatile. If I had the space, I would even use it in the bathroom to hold toiletries and hand towels, especially with the hooks, but for now, it works perfectly where I have it. Mine was originally silver, and after seeing those warmer brass versions, I felt like it needed a little update. So I took some gold paint, mixed a bit of burnt umber to tone it down, give it more of that aged brass look, then brushed it on and let it dry. And that simple change made such a difference. It still has that same character I've always loved, but for now it feels a little more current and blends in beautifully with everything else. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next Saturday.